Thank you, Anna. My name is Shelley Gagne, and I will be your moderator for today's session. I'd like to welcome you to the Recruiting Trends webinar, 5 Content Marketing Best Practices that can help you recruit. Taking notes before we begin, a recording of this presentation will be available on recruitingtrends.com within the next several business days. About today's webinar. Talk quality, everyone's lines have been muted. I encourage you to ask questions throughout the presentation. Please type questions into the chat box on the lower right-hand side of your screen and hit send to submit them. We will answer questions as time permits. If you are unable to answer all of your questions within our allotted time, we'll make sure you receive follow-up post-webinar. The chat box is for both questions and technical support issues. We'll hold all questions until the Q&A portion at the end of the presentation. If you have issues with the audio during the presentation, please note audio is provided through your computer speakers. If you are still having issues, please click on the Request Phone button on the top right-hand side of your screen to get teleconference information. If you're connected, you can log on again using the instructions provided in your initial confirmation email. If you continue to experience difficulties, please email webinars@recruitingtrends.com. Finally, if you're on Twitter and would like to tweet out today's session, please hashtag Glassdoor and handle GD4Employers, and that's GDFOR Employers. Our presenters today are Garibaldi and Allison Cruz. Garibaldi, author of Employer Branding for Dummies, Glassdoor Special Edition, brings 10 years of experience in advertising, marketing, and human resources to a role as a senior content marketing manager for Glassdoor. At Glassdoor, Alicia conducts monthly client training sessions, develops original content marketing assets such as ebooks and videos, and contributes thought leadership pieces to the company's blog and social media channels. Head of social media at Kforce. She is passionate about improving interactions with online audiences and enhancing Kforce's employer brand, social media, and discovering new ways to leverage it for branding and talent acquisition purposes. Background includes recruiting, sourcing, consulting, and social media in corporate executive search and RPO. At this time, I'd like to hand it over to Alicia and Allison.
Thanks, Ellie. And I hope everybody can hear me on the line today. I'm just going to cover the agenda for today's webinar. So on today's webinar, and I'm so excited to be speaking on it today because this is a topic I'm particularly very passionate about, and I know Allison is too. So what we're going to cover is today's candidate landscape, why active messaging matters, and 5 best practices to help you recruit. We'll get into those best practices towards the end, but we're going to be talking about measuring social channels and different channels where you might be trying to attract talent. We're going to talk about developing personas, developing calendars, and how to do that. How to make your messaging about them and not you as a company, and then also my favorite rule, which is following the 3 R's as a content marketer, which is recycle, reuse, and repurpose. So I'm going to be speaking today on kind of a macro level, hopefully fitting every company size and industry online, and Allison's going to be talking about this on a micro perspective geared more towards one-on-one recruitment marketing messaging. So I'm so excited to get started. So let's first talk about how today's candidate landscape has changed. And what I mean by this is that the way candidates are evaluating jobs today is different from how they evaluated jobs, 5, 10 years ago. Think about it. Everybody has a mobile phone in their hand. Everybody is going on sites like Glassdoor to compare company benefits and information and salary information, see what they could be making at different companies. So I always tell employers it's just as much today about you interviewing them as they're interviewing you. So reading all the employee feedback and interview reviews and seeing firsthand, what people are experiencing both inside and outside your organization is really important as you embark on this journey of figuring out your story and your company's message.
As Alicia was saying, mobile use definitely continues to grow. JobBite just recently, a couple of months ago, released their Job Seeker Nation study showing that 47% of millennials are using mobile for job search. So, we know people are on the go. This is nothing new. We know that today's landscape includes people that are reliant and, let's face it, addicted, right, to their mobile devices. The other thing we want to keep in mind, too, though, as we set this webinar off, is that workforce is currently employed. And so you have a higher probability as recruiters of, your prospects actually viewing and maybe even responding to your message online rather than, picking up your phone call during the middle of the workday. Let's think about this. Like if you are, let's say you're a recruiter, you're trying to contact a Java developer in Chicago who is currently employed and, you just can't get a hold of this person because you're calling them during the middle of their workday. So people know that I do this. A lot of people screen their calls and they might not even pick it up if they don't know, if they don't recognize the number, they don't know who's calling. Also might be sitting right next to their coworkers or even their boss, so they're not going to call and get into a conversation that could be overheard. But if you're sending them a message that they can just view on their phone, then you could have a higher probability that they're actually going to read it and respond. The thing, though, that we have to keep in mind is that recruiters face very stiff competition, and we have to find ways that we can stand out. So many job candidates are flooded by messages from recruiters all the time. Many of the messages that these professionals receive are low quality, they're not customized, they're boring, they're template, blah, blah, blah. Well, the good news is that this presents a significant, exciting opportunity for you to step up your messaging game. So in this webinar, that's what I wanted to focus on is the one-on-one messaging at that micro level of what can you do to step up your game. So you can't step it up, you can stand out from the crowd. It takes a little work up front. It takes a little research, and by doing your research first, cross-referencing across different social networks and websites, you can pick up on details about that candidate in order to fully customize your message. One of the biggest complaints that we hear at Kforce from our candidates is that recruiters are just really not doing their job well by sending out, template, boring messages with either lack of engaging content or incorrect content. Nowadays, the smallest mistake in someone's message could offend someone, like misspelling someone's name, and there you go. It's all across social media in seconds. So you need to stand out against competing recruiters when contacting the same professionals, and you need to master the art of effective messaging, which is what we will talk about today. That's Alicia.
That was awesome, Allison. I also want to bring up mobile optimized pages, and I particularly think this is really important as we're talking about how the landscape has changed. And I know, some recruiters on the line may not have a mobile optimized career page at this point, and we actually found from a survey that 43% of job seekers use a mobile device to search for jobs, while 59% of recruiters say they haven't invested in a career site on mobile. So you can see there's a big disconnect, and the more you're ahead of this so candidates don't click and go somewhere else, the better. And I know some companies, technology also have mobile optimized pages, and you can see how that might look to a candidate. If you're a high-tech company and they can't find you on mobile, that's probably a big problem for a candidate who's coming to work for you. So thinking about this and starting to implement content that people can reach in multiple places is super important. The next slide, this goes over talent trends from 2014, and as you can see up on the screen, 85% of the workforce may be open to hearing from recruiters. That's great news, right? And this is from a source on, LinkedIn blog post. So that's great news, but you might be trying to attract those people that aren't looking for a job, that are super happy and very good at what they do. Just recently did a recruiter guide where we interviewed and surveyed a bunch of top recruiters in 2015 and said, what are your top challenges? I love, the results that we found I thought were super eye-opening, so I'll read some of those to you. But 67% of recruiters believe that retention rates would be higher if candidates had a clear picture of what to expect about working there, before taking the job. Half, 48% U.S. decision makers report that they don't see enough qualified candidates. I know we've all heard that quality is an issue, so find that quality candidate and tracking what happens to people after you hire them from different sources is super important. 51% of recruiters believe candidates have grown wary of emails from networking sites and respond at a much slower rate. But in-mails, you get so many of them, it's really hard to stand out from the pack and also get people to respond to those messages. And that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today, how to create content that evokes a response from your audience, how to get inside their head and figure out how you can reach them. And with marketing and branding and content marketing, I go through this all the time. It's not a set it and forget it strategy. You might do one thing one time that works great, but you need to constantly be evolving that to stay cutting edge and attract top talent. I know Gen Z is coming up the ranks, graduating soon, and they have a whole different set of objectives if you're trying to attract college grads. So staying in the know, staying cutting edge, and constantly evolving that message is increasingly more important.
And that was great, by the way. So let's talk about how we are defining effective messaging. So I don't know, you might have heard that phrase before, but for today's purposes, the way that I'm defining it is that it's part art and it's part science. It means to create emails, in-mails, LinkedIn messages, tweets, etc., in such a way that it compels your message's recipient to respond to you. Next slide. So let's think about this, and then I'll pass it over to Alicia again. Do you think that you could be a successful recruiter if people don't respond to you? Not likely, right? So your response rate is directly tied to your success. We are in the business of finding people and forming meaningful connections with them, and it all starts with our approach, which is that initial message. Often, a recruiter's first form of contact with someone is a digital message. So in this case, that first message is the candidate's first impression of you, and we all know what people say about that, right? You don't get a second chance to form that first impression. The candidate would decide, whether or not to even respond to you based on the quality and the contents of that message. And remember, you're facing very stiff competition, so is that message going to be the start of a meaningful connection with someone else? Or will it be viewed as a template message? You have your LinkedIn recruiter seat, you're slapping 50 people on a clipboard, you're blasting it out, just not a good practice. And you know what? Our candidates know that. They know when they're getting spam. I know when I'm getting spam, and I hate it. So that's just not the way to connect with people. So, that's the whole art and science of this effective messaging thing that we're talking about. We live in a digital, social, and mobile world. So it's imperative that you know how to communicate with others online in order to be successful in today's world. What do you think?
Absolutely, Allison. I totally agree. And I know we've all heard this phrase, but content is king and messaging matters. You can have a job description that reads really, really well, and you can have others that nobody's clicking on. So messaging really matters. And you can't have a career site saying one thing and your employees saying another. So I always say it's really important to, review and know everywhere that your brand has a presence and make sure you're managing and, managing that reputation and that message. Your credibility, if you don't have employee buy-in, isn't going to work. So if you develop your messaging, interview those top employees and say, what do you love? What do you love about working here? What needs to be worked on and what's missing? And follow up on that strategy and final messaging. Like I said, without employee buy-in, your messaging can only go so far. And consistency and training everyone on what to say will give that message credibility.
Absolutely agree that training people, it starts with training, and we have to train our people on how to communicate online. We can't use that same training that worked 10 years ago, not in today's social media, mobile world. We just can't do that. We have to learn how to communicate in 2015. It's essential to our success. We need to teach people that they have 100% control over the quality of their message. That's the good news, right? Is that we control this. We control how great our message or this. So have them start with auditing their messages. What is their response rate? So they might have to manually look at this. That's the question I get sometimes is, well, how, unless I have a LinkedIn recruiter sheet that flat out tells me my acceptance rate and my response rate, how do I know? Well, have them keep a tally for, a couple of weeks, a month. How many messages are they sending out? We do something at Kforce where we're tracking, how many phone calls we're making and how many responses we get from our voicemail. So, you can even look at that from a voicemail perspective. And look at, here's the before shot, and then later, after all this training and sharing best practices, you'll have your after shot. So look at the response rate, and then, set them. Do the messages represent your brand in the most positive light? Encourage them to be different. Encourage them to show their unique personality, have a sense of humor, be interesting. And the one thing that I say, I guess, for the takeaways, for you, would be be a person first and a recruiter second. Be a person first, recruiter second. We know the response rate is definitely tied to our success. If people are ignoring us, if they're deleting our messages, if they're not responding to us, they're not calling us back, we're not going to be successful in our business. Can't. If candidates ignore you, how are they ever going to become hires?
I think that's an excellent point. And it leads me into our next slide, which is about how every company has a story to tell. And I help employers with this a lot. When I spent a lot of time thinking about this as we were writing employer branding for dummies, how to help employers figure out what that message is and then how to relay that out to potential candidates. And what we typically see with our job seekers when we survey them is they read about 4 to 7 reviews before even talking to a representative at your company. So the first thing I want to talk about on this slide is that responding to reviews is actually a great way to control the message out there and also let candidates know where you stand. And if you aren't managing what's being said, someone else is already writing that story for you. And also, in the same survey of job seekers, we found that 69% of candidates say their impression of an employer improves when they see a response to reviews. So search through what's out there and see where your company perspective and how to respond to certain posts and messages that are out there. And I always tell employers to think, you're not just responding to the person that wrote that post or review, you're responding to the thousands of candidates who also might be seeing that message. I want to talk about, we do this a lot as marketers. We set up a lot of brainstorm sessions to figure out what's our differentiator, what's working, what isn't, what can we do more of, what do we need to do less of to attract our audience, so that we can be effective. We need to do the same as recruiters. You need to wear a marketing hat and figure out which jobs are candidates clicking on the most. Where you improve your job descriptions that you're not getting the right traffic that you hope to be seeing. For instance, at Glassdoor, we're moving towards more interactive descriptions, and testing that. Marketers, we test a lot of different things and see what works and what doesn't. So find out what your strongest suits are and how to market those the best to candidates so that you can stand out from the pack. I'm going to set the stage. I know Allison and I spent a lot of time talking about kind of the landscape of recruiting and, high level and micro level, ways to message. But let's get into those 5 best practices to help you recruit. I mentioned them at the beginning, so I won't spend a ton of time on this, but we're going to be talking a lot about how to measure channels, so what metrics to look at and show up for management that will help you, get more buy-in so that you can be more effective, how to develop personas, which is super important as you're trying to attract, people from every different department within your organization, how to plan and create an effective calendar, and again, how to make it about them, not you, and then those 3 R's that I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, which is recycle, reuse, repurpose. Let's start with number 1, measuring your channels, and we could probably spend a ton of time on this, but I think it's really eye-opening to check the numbers. As content marketers, we analyze traffic to our website, we analyze traffic to our blog, every different page on our website. We look at the followers that we're earning based on posts and how much engagement that we're getting on every single social media channel. And this tells us where to invest and where our audience is consuming our content. And then change over time. That's why it's important to kind of create benchmarks at the beginning and say, what are we going to be looking at over the next 6 months to a year and see how those change. Monitor your top channels, and help you hit your team's objectives. And then you can take that to upper management and say, this is how you improved on every different channel. And as a recruiter, your career site matters, but it's not the only real estate to watch over. So you really need to, like I said, look at every single social channel where you have a presence, measure the jobs that they're clicking on, see what demographic of people are going to different places to find you. As marketers, we always say if you can't measure it, it didn't happen. So numbers talk, and they can help you build a business case to invest more in different areas. A blog post I'd love to point out that I think is so important to check out and awesome to see is that at Glassdoor, we actually released how we spent all of our recruitment budget in 2014. So very transparent about what we spent where and what that led to. Our general manager, Steve Roop, wrote the blog post, and it's on our B2B blog at employers.glassdoor.com. And I think it's really eye-opening. And creating graphs like this that you can show your management teams on what's working and what isn't is really going to help you figure out where to invest. And again, I think we look at this pie chart. What I find most important, just to point out, is that strong referral programs help. So create those brand ambassadors internally, and they can help you find, talent that are very close and similar to those A players within your organization right now. And also, another point I wanted to bring up is avoid self-select tools. Make sure your applicant tracking system is accurately measuring where everybody's coming from, and then also see what happens after they enter. I talked a lot about how recruiters aren't seeing enough quality based on the survey that we just did. So are you measuring quality? Have assessment tools and scores every step of the way to ensure success, and then also start measuring what channels are bringing you the most qualified candidates. Point that we wanted to talk about today is how to develop personas. And again, as marketers, we think about this a ton. Think about our buyers and what their pain points are and how we can create specific content that might help solve that problem. So as recruiters, you can apply that to your candidates. The same rule applies. Prep for interviews by researching where that candidate came from. See what the cons are to working at that other organization and how your company is going to solve their problems by them coming to work for you. Creating persona can really help you hire for each role within your organization. This will help frame why your company is the right choice and why your company is better at addressing pain points that this person may have suffered in another company or that your competitors repeatedly have problems with. So get to those strengths and give concrete reasons why your company will meet their needs. And like I said at the very beginning of the webinar, it's as much about them interviewing you as you're interviewing them. So they're seeing why you're going to be the best fit for them. Rating that point, one size does not fit all. Like we all know, sales professionals are interested in different things than engineers might be interested in. And you need to go across your organization and, like I said, interview those high performers and ask them what's working and what they love the most about their job and why they continue to stay, and weave that into your job description. And we survey our sales professionals compared to software engineers. I'll bring up one stat to show some of those differences, but 68% sales professionals will be looking for a job in the next year, so they tend to look, at a lot higher rate, but only 7% say blog posts are effective. Again, it's for a sales professional. Meetups at our company actually tend to work really well with sales professionals, whereas software engineers, only 25% will be looking for a job in the next, few months, and 33% said that blog posts from engineers within that company, might help entice them. So keep evolving your strategy and see what works, and weave in the message, from people internally. And also another great way to get started that could be helpful is with a Glassdoor free employer account. You can actually see what people are clicking on, what jobs are resonating with them the most, and then the demographic of those people coming to the page. So this can help you really hone in on your next all-star. If we haven't made the case for how important personas are, let's talk about automation, and I know Allison, I think, is going to be talking to this as well, or she talked about this earlier on how customizing that message is really, really important, and mastering effective messaging is really important because the competition out there is fierce. Automation, it might help you, but it's really not going to cut it, and it might actually make candidates feel like a number, which is what you really want to avoid. So I always tell recruiters, make sure to close the loop, customize your message. Here we said if a person has a good experience, they'll tell 2 people. If they have a bad experience, they'll tell 10. So really be cognizant of that. I know we just hired somebody on our team because we had interviewed someone else actually. They weren't a right fit, but they actually said their friend would be a great fit. And we hired them and found a great candidate as a result because that person had a great experience with us. So make people feel like they're more than a number, even when they come to interview you. Make sure your onboarding process is really, and your onboarding process actually, make sure that confirms all the reasons that they took the job. Figuring out your messaging and content every step of the way definitely matters. And then, time to learn people's motivators, concerns, their dreams, and gaps in between, so they can really tailor that message to each individual. Making that connection is going to be so important and help you close the deal on, somebody that is come in and do a good job for you. Again, you want to sell those people that might not be looking to move, but that your company is a way better fit for. Some questions to ask as you're developing these personas. I really like these questions. It's what is our audience doing in social media spaces we are interested in? In other words, how are they engaging with our brand, and what's the actions that they're taking? What motivates their behavior? What would cause them to leave? Read the interview reviews. See how your interview process is going at your company. We have a lot of those on Glassdoor, and they're really helpful. Social communities already active in our space, or even around your brand. Like I said, know everywhere that you have a presence. See where conversations are taking place, and then how people are referencing your brand and in what context. Word of mouth is important, and it's, especially with millennials and a lot of other audiences, make sure that, what they're saying about you fits who you are as a business. The third point, I know we talked about personas there for a bit, so now we're going to move on to planning and how to create a calendar, keep track of goals, and measure key performance indicators. And again, as a marketer, we do this a ton, because for one person, you can only do so much. And I know, some companies might be on the line where they don't have dedicated resources towards social media experts, and they don't have dedicated resources towards creating content. Actually, we're the same here at Glassdoor. We divide it amongst our recruiting team. And so we come up with a calendar saying who's going to post what when, and who's going to be in charge of Instagram what week, Divide up those channels and figure out a plan, and it's actually, can be fun for the team to all have a stake in it and get involved. You could even make a competition out of it, who's going to get the most likes. There's a lot of different ways and methods that you can do without even budget to do so, to prove the point, of how important that it is. And also, I don't know if we have any employee engagement or employer branding or employee satisfaction people on the line, but make sure that people internally, we talked about it a lot, those ambassadors internally matter. Referral programs matter, I'm sure, at your own organization. So feedback about your company on 30, 60, 90-day basis, and then annually, however you can, but make sure that you're interviewing what's happening internally and seeing any problems if they do come up. SHRM puts the cost of replacing people, I think, at 2 times their salary, so it's costly when people leave. And with marketing and, being very effective at this persona building and attracting other people that are similar to those within your organization can really help people internally feel that, important and that they're more than a number as well. And at Glassdoor, we're embarking on a big task. Our HR team is actually meeting with every single employee one-on-one just to, talk to each person and help them feel like they have a face and a name at our org and are moving the business. So this is just a sample recruitment marketing calendar from our friends over at Marketo. I love all the templates that they provide for us, but this is just a sample. And again, just reiterating, assign who's doing what when. You don't always need dedicated budget to make it happen. You can split it amongst the team and have every single person chip in. To our fourth point, which is make it about them, not you. Again, we talked about personas quite a bit and how each person is motivated by different things. We all know that you're an awesome company. That's why the person took action and applied. But, the job description and the About Us messaging, it's only going to get you so far. So you need to sell them on the job experience, both online and when they come in for that interview. Market your strengths and also those expectations for why they applied. If you said that you're, agile and you're a startup and, make sure that culture shines through when they come in for that interview in every single office that they might come to. And this can all be done by training hiring managers, explaining why they're the best fit for the role. Again, weaving in that messaging on how they're going to contribute to the overall growth of the organization, through what they're doing at the job is only going to help them, be satisfied once they start and stay for a really long time so that, you don't have to open up that rec again. I'll hand it over to Allison to talk about customizing email and social communication.
Yes. So you're right. People expect to be have their experiences be tailored to them. So it's no different in our industry. You need to tailor each message to your message's recipient, start with the subject line. So let's walk through an example. So picture an IT candidate who is in very high demand. He gets flooded by messages from recruiters every week and quickly opens about 1 to 2 a week and actually responds even less than that. So looking at his inbox, what is one of the first things that he sees on each message? The subject line. So the subject line offers up your message's first impression. Sometimes on whether or not to even open the message hinges on that subject line. So at K-Force, we spend a lot of time on subject lines, what's working, what's not working. We test them out. We share them with each other. So here's the thing. Spammy template messages often scream recruiter spam. You guys probably mean by recruiter spam, like, oh, I'm hiring in Chicago, la-da-da. Okay, that's great. That's not differentiate my message on hundreds of other messages that this particular IT candidate who is, top of his game or whatever is receiving. I know I get messages like that where it's like, I really get messages like, junior recruiter is needed in Chicago. I wonder if that person even looked at my LinkedIn profile, and that's not a position I would be into, or even what's a lot worse, I'm hiring. Okay, great. You are doing nothing to differentiate yourself. Boring. Next. Picturing like this recruiter just shotgunning, 50 messages at a time, excuse me, that are not customized at all, and I'm not going to open them. However, if a recruiter had a subject line that was humorous or tied details, from what that person could see on my digital footprint, my social presence, in a subject line, I am definitely opening that. It's engaging, if it's unique, if it's funny, I'll probably be compelled to open that message and see what it's all about. Nice for each recipient. So now let's go into the body of the message. Your attention span is very short. That's our society we live in. It's just short. It's got to grab us fast, or it's probably not going to grab us at all. Message short. Don't make them read a boring novel, or they're going to hit delete before they then get to your message's halfway point. Remember, we live in a very mobile society, so don't make their thumbs tired by all the scrolling they have to do and trying to read your short novel on everything that you need in a job and everything you need in a candidate, blah, 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 on their mobile device. Speaking of, it's a good idea to end your message with an open-ended, interesting question tailored just for them. So think about it. If I'm reading messages on my phone, let's say I'm sitting on the train or something and I'm scrolling through my messages, I come to your message that you sent me, and it's an open question that's easy for me to respond to, I will even be more likely to respond. I might be like, oh, great, this recruiter is asking me what I'd like to focus on this year within social media, within the social media space. That's a cool question. Okay, I'll hit reply and easily type my message back, sentence or two. And also reference specifics in the message. So you want to call out specifically what you saw in their profile that caused you to reach out out to them. And be specific as possible. It's not enough to just mention job title or their company. I mean, what are they focused on? What are they excited about? Have they published a recent blog article? Did you read it? Can you call out details? Preference if you need to, on sites beyond LinkedIn or wherever you saw the resume, do your work first. Choose other sites. Put the details in your message. Showing that you took the time to get to know them first before sending them some junky template message help establish credibility. Following, referencing data in your message about your company, how many people you've hired, et cetera, can go a long way to establish that credibility. So I give you an analogy because I love analogies, and I think this one just hit home. My mentor said this to me. I was all about it, and I love it. Now I have to share it with you. So let's say that I own the most successful car dealership in the Chicagoland area. I'm the best. I live in Chicago, by the way, so I keep using Chicago. But let's say I have the best car dealership around. So I get to buy a new car. We'll start with my car dealership, right? Like, would you come to me first? Well, because I have inventory. So I'm not a mom and pop shop that have, a few cars out back that you can poke around and see if maybe you like one of them, right? I have all the models, all the colors, all the types that you could possibly want, all the features. So you're likely to find what you need working with me. So for us, our recruiters share inventory with our candidates. We represent 70% of the Fortune 500 companies. We represent 80% of the Fortune 100 companies. So we have inventory. It's a great share that and be as specific as possible to your messages recipients to show that, you know what you're doing. You've got the inventory. You're the person you're the person that they want to talk to. Okay, apology. Next slide. And I water because I'm like totally talking too much. Hold on a second. Okay, so let's talk close of your message. So we just talk about the body. Talk about the close of the message. No, before we do that, we're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about making it about them. Sorry. So by making it about them, that means that you're not, throwing a laundry list of how wonderful you are, blah, 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 this is what I need, this is all of me. No, the art of crafting this effective message is that you're establishing credibility through data, but you're not just spitting it at them. You're still focusing your message on that person, their needs, what they're motivated by, their best interest, because you care about them and you show that. Hopefully you care about them, or you probably shouldn't be a recruiter. But let's say, yes, you do care about them. Show that in your message. So with my team, I like to do random audits on the team's messages. So I count how many sentences start with I. Hi, my name is Allison. I'm a recruiter with Kforce. I'm working on this job. I saw your profile. I saw this, and I did that, and I did that, I did that. Great, next. It's really the good visual. It's a visual exercise so that you can spot messages that are more about the recruiter's needs than the candidate's needs. You might do that with your own messages. If you're managing a team, you might want to do that with your team. One of the worst things that I've seen recruiters do in the initial message, their first message to a prospect, is to cut and paste the job description and slap it right in the message. That's horrible. That's all they're doing is they're just load up, they're shotgunning it out, blasting it every which way, hoping it's going to stick somewhere. So this actually isn't customizing the message to each person. It's not being a person first and the recruiter second. You want a human being first. You want to connect. You want to have a human connection first. You can talk about the job, that's great, but don't just blast out the job description. That's what we have tools for. That's what we have these automation softwares that can do. Be a person. Be in the technology that you use. Be a person. Talk about interests outside of your job. So when you're on social media, remember, social is like the first part of that phrase, social. So you want to be social. You want to show your personality. You want to small talk. Just like you would in real life. You would be like, oh, are you going to catch the Packers game on Saturday? Or, oh my gosh, I just had this cupcake at whatever place. It was awesome. You want to just be a person. That's how you're going to draw other people to you. That's how you draw candidates to you. Connecting person to person. Don't jobs at them. Okay. Now we'll talk about the close. So the close of the message. So I know I have some thoughts on it, and Alicia, I believe you have some thoughts on this as well. So the close of your message also has a huge impact on your response rate. So I came out various ways to close a message, done some A and B testing of, what has worked, what works the best, what helps elevate our response rate. We found that an open-ended, engaging question helps encourage the person to respond to us. Let's think about mobile society again. I'm going to use myself as an example again. So if I get a message on my phone, maybe I'm riding, on a train on the way to work or whatever. I don't because I work at home, but we're pretending. And I get a message, and it ends in a question that's easy for me to respond to in a couple of sentences. Chances are good, I might just respond, assuming the message was quality enough that I took the time to read it, right? But imagine if I get a message saying, will you please send me your resume? If I don't have an updated resume because I'm happily employed, I'm not looking, I have not updated my resume, since coming to K4, so I don't have one. Second of all, if you did, I don't have it stored on my phone, I don't have it stored in the cloud, there's no way for me to get to it from my phone. So I'm not going to do that. I'll remember to respond when I get back to my desktop, but if I don't really care and I'm not really bought into this person, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to send that. However, if this recruiter was like, hey, what do you see yourself focused on in 2015? What do you want to do in 2 years? Oh, now I can respond with a couple of sentences. Alicia, what's thoughts?
Yes, I completely agree, and I just think it's all about testing and refining. As content marketers, we do this a lot, and we A/B test subject lines all the time. And actually, it's funny because subject lines sometimes with a question can get higher response as well. So it's just really, putting yourself in the shoes of those candidates that you're trying to reach and figuring out what that motivator is and what that message is that's going to resonate the most. And again, test, and then that'll help you refine what's been working and evolve that strategy over time. So lastly, because I know people might have some questions on the line, and we'd love to open it up very shortly to get to those. Let's talk about the 3 R's, I guess they're in a different order. Repurpose, reuse, recycle. So once you have great content and you know what works and you find those themes that really resonate with, different personas that you're trying to reach, repurpose them. You can reuse content up to 4 times. The next slide will show you that. But, make sure that once you have those A players that you love at your organization that are your ambassadors, have them write a blog post for you. Leverage them in videos. Use photos. Sometimes people don't have time to watch a whole video, but they want to see a photo of that team that they're going to be joining. Make sure that you reuse specs and content as frequently as you can when you know it works. And what better subject to use than your own employees? People are kind of moving away from the stock photo era of staged photos. They really want to see what it's like inside, and they want you to be transparent, so that they know what they're getting into. In some cases, this might be somebody who's taking their family along with them on this journey. So sell them and, make sure they have all of the proof, before they come and work for you. Create a content calendar so you know what's going live when. I know as a content marketer, we have, content that we splice up different ways, and we have a go live date. On this date, we're going to push, the volume up in this area, or plan around holidays. There's, Employee Appreciation Day. Incorporate that into your message as you're emailing people that day. That might help you stand out from the pack. And lastly, a calendar can really help you around hiring pushes. I know different times of the year might be more favorable to, attract different types of candidates, especially with college grads. So make sure that you have it all line itemed out that, we're going to be at an event this day with this message, and then we're going to incorporate it on all of our social channels. Maybe all of your cover pages promote that same event. Or cover photos on all of your social pages. There's so many different ways that you can get creative and stand out and do different things and reuse, content that is really working. So again, from the survey of our recruiters and that recruiter that I've been mentioning, 72% of recruiters believe their company has control of their employer brand, while 27% do not think their company is paying enough attention to that branding and its impact on recruiting. And I just kind of wanted to the audience with that. It's just so important to start managing your reputation and that message that's out there and bringing it to life with really great content. So So getting to this diagram, I love this diagram. This is all the different ways that you can repurpose content. You know, there's social, there's visual people, there's training and teaching them, document sharing sites, blog posts. I mean, I know it can get overwhelming. That's why meet as a team if you don't have a dedicated resource and figure out who's going to be doing what when. That can really help you win the war for talent. And I'd like to hand it over to Allison to talk to this slide as well.
This is Stan the Spammer. It's my little drawing, and I want to leave you with one analogy. So this is the last slide I'll cover, and then we can get into Q&A. I want to break it down. Like, I want to let's pretend like the way that recruiters act on Twitter, let's say, is the same way that they would act at a party. And it's just kind of funny. We were talking on Twitter the other day, a couple of my friends in the industry, and I wanted to share this analogy with you all. So one of the biggest mistakes I see recruiting on Twitter is spamming people. They just simply maybe don't know better, or they're not taking the time to understand how to use Twitter. By the way, they do this on other channels too. I'm just picking on Twitter right now. All they do is post about jobs. They're doing day in and day out. I'm hiring. Maybe they're setting up, an auto feed. There's software out there. I won't name names. That's what all it does is it's I'm hiring. So what does that tell me when I see that? Well, that recruiter is just thinking about their needs, what they're trying to do with Twitter. They're sharing what they are working on, and they're giving very little thought to building actual human connections with other human beings on social media. Picture this, and here's my Stan the Spammer analogy, this drawing you see on the screen, is let's say this guy's at a party. And at a party, some guy's repeating like a broken record, I'm hiring. Okay, how many friends do you think this guy will have? Who's talking to this dude over in the corner? Nobody. Now someone else who's showing sincerity, authenticity, focusing conversation on the other person, finding out more about them. She has tons of friends. So it's on social media. Be a person first, recruiter second. You should come out of a can and not a recruiter. Make small talk, answer and ask questions, talk about current events. Sprinkle in job posting every now and again. That's all that slide. Okay.
Shelley, there to field some questions for us?
Yeah. Thank you both, Alicia and Allison, for a great presentation. So now we're going to be moving into the Q&A session. If you haven't already submitted your question, just send your question into the chat box on the right of your screen and just hit send. Question we have is, can you give more specific examples of creating and using a candidate persona?
And using a candidate persona. I can think of some other ways. I think for some companies, I'm going to use an example. I know Enterprise Rent-A-Car heavily attracts management trainee hires, which are college grads. They're a great customer of ours, and we've done really great in that area. But what they do, and like I said, if you're attracting college grads, you need to be evolving to what matters to those people. So read a ton of stats on, millennials that are graduating. Read a ton of stats on Gen Z. Find every source that you can to figure out what their motivators are. For millennials, they really like career growth. They really like strong leadership. And they really like feeling like they're contributing to the organization. We know that. So you need to weave that into how your organization is going to set them up for success. When you're interviewing them, talk about how so-and-so, got in the past 90 days. So tailor that message to what really resonates with those people. Salespeople and commission-based, pre that. And I think Gen Z now, from stats I've been seeing in webinars that I've gone to, they're more interested in salary. So it's actually going to be more important about, the cost of living and how you're going to help them with the cost of living, because it's expensive in the Bay Area, I know for me. So it's not easy making that entry-level salary anymore. And you're, for those top A players that you want to come build your organization, we got in and preach to that. So I think it's really just, again, putting yourself in those people's shoes, interviewing people at your own organization and why they came to work for you, what sold them on the opportunity. Use your own resources internally, but also scour the web for great surveys that have been done on this audience that you're trying to reach. Spiel.
Thank you. Next question we have, we got a couple questions about this. If you could provide some examples of attention-grabbing email subject lines.
Grab some quick ones off the top of my head. The question mark, it's funny, question marks work well. Gosh, now I'm having, my brain is going blank. This, yeah. You go ahead, Allison.
It worked well. So one of the things that my team has used is, why can't the developers sharp? And then, like, that's the subject line. So sometimes it could be like a play on words for what you're recruiting for, because it could be like I don't know. It could, for me, I'm social media, right? So if somebody made like a nerdy social media joke, I would open it, regardless of if I'm looking for a job or not. I would open it. And we get that a lot. Like, we get that a lot with our team. Is I'm not even looking for a job, but I had to open and I had to respond to you because I've never gotten a message from a recruiter like this ever before. Let's talk in a few months. So that's one example.
I just saw mine. I don't know why I couldn't remember it. We could always be closing in the subject line, and I know it sounds funny, but you could even use like quotes, and that really might resonate with a salesperson, or, you know, it can be something witty and fun that you test just to see how that resonates. You know, and it's all dependent on your culture and what works for you as an organization, but you know, what's like a slogan that you use across your organization, and sometimes just plugging that in or putting the person's name in the subject or the person's, you know, company that they're with right now. You know, as a marketer here, it can be effective to kind of customize and, you know, use quotes and fun things that really grab people.
Got one more to share. The subject line could be, why did the developer quit? Then you open the message, and on the top line it says, because I didn't get a raise. And that's like, for people who are in the industry, yeah, they'll get it and they'll laugh and they'll think you're funny.
Good too. I like that.
Question we got was, if you could give some examples of open-ended questions at the end of an email to a potential candidate.
Examples of an open-ended question? So I'll speak to this, and then Alicia, you might have some thoughts on this too. So an open-ended question, you know, it needs to be customized to them. I mean, I think like the ones that are a little weaker are just generic to anybody, because I think that could also scream, I'm using a template. So it's like, if you have in store for 2015 is a little bit too generic. If you can get more specific, like, oh, I see that you're working on XYZ project. That's, you know, where do you see that headed this year, or what more do you want to do with that project, or, you know, this new technology came out, do you plan on working on that this year? I mean, have it be focused on that individual, but still be open-ended and easy for them to respond to in a couple of sentences.
Absolutely. I think that, yeah, I think that that's good. I don't know if I have any other examples on that one, but I loved the question, ending with a question. I also think, you know, if you can plug in visuals, you know, that might grab them. Certain visuals when I open emails really speak to me more than others. So that could be one way as well. I know those little cartoon characters that have the fun quotes. I love those. So there's, yeah, ways that you could do it.
Thanks. So the next one, in the beginning of the webinar, you shared that 43% of candidates use a mobile device. What percent of companies that were not prepared to work with those candidates?
Oh, let me see if I can find that. That was actually from our friends over at JobBite, so I could probably even find the source as well. I thought it was 59%. I think it was 58 or 59%.
Great. Thank you. So then,
it was 59% of recruiters had invested in a career site on mobile. The source for those stats was from our friends over at JobBite.
Thank you. The next question, she said that her company is relatively new in trying to gain an online social media presence. Besides LinkedIn, what are some other websites to link our blogs, job postings, etc. off of?
That's a great question. Oh, so, Alicia.
The two most important, I think, off the top of my head are Twitter and LinkedIn. I would say real estate, for however you're going to be messaging to candidates on all those platforms. I know at Glassdoor we break them out so that people know what page to go to for what. And then I love Instagram because photos can really speak volumes. So I think, being active on Instagram, and again, this changes a lot. Like, we live in a mobile world, so knowing where you have a presence and setting it up everywhere is only going to set you up for success. And then just, set reminders to monitor traffic, monthly or weekly or whatever that might be.
The next question we have is, are there any companies that you feel are doing this well that I could check out?
Yeah, so I know that one of our customers, Solar City, just spent a lot of time redoing their career site, and I really think it's an absolutely fantastic career site. They actually use photos of their employees, but they look like, professional photos. So it's really great, I think, how they redid that and used great content from people internally to bring that message to life. So that could be an excellent one to check out.
The question we have is, what if my company doesn't have social handles created for candidates?
Yeah, I think the time is now to kind of claim your real estate in those areas and figure out, with stakeholders at your organization, how you're going to be messaging to different audiences depending on what kind of business you are. If you can manage it all on one handle, great. But I know for Glassdoor, we use @InsideGlassdoor for most of our channels on social that speak to candidates.
And we also empower our individuals at our company to be out there on social, because they're on the front lines as well. So it's not just all of our messaging isn't coming from one centralized social media team, but we want people to take their own individual brand seriously and come up with their own content plan and get out there and talk with people as well.
Thanks. The next question we have is, what are some of the biggest mistakes you see in messages sent from recruiters to candidates?
I would say just people either being lazy or not knowing better. It's like to give people the benefit of the doubt of maybe they just don't know that that's not how social media works. That's not how to be successful with social media. So I just think that if all you're doing on a social media channel is setting up something with Horn, Tweet My Job, something like that, where you're only sharing jobs, in my opinion, that's failing social media. So I think that's one of the biggest mistakes I might have made that a few years ago as well. But that's one of the biggest mistakes I see. Also people that think that sending out template messages only and not customizing, that's another big mistake I see.
Alicia, can you repeat the name of the company that you said that social media well?
So, I said Solar City. It's all one word. Yeah, they're in the Bay Area, but they just redid their career site with some great content.
Great.
That I think it's really cool. They use their own employees, but check it out. The photos are great, and I really like what they did with it.
Thanks. So I have time for one more question today. The last question is, where can I get information to put into my customized message to a candidate?
I would just say, cross-reference as many other sites as you can. Go to, depending on who your target, candidate is, go to, Stack Overflow, go to GitHub, go to Twitter, go to LinkedIn. Even looking at images, seeing images, you see that they are fishing a lot or something, or you see that they like to travel, or maybe they have a dog, bringing in those personal details that you can see You're a good recruiter. You're a good sourcer. You know, you understand how to find information online. Use that to your advantage. Add in those little details into your message.
Very much. So that's all the time we have for today's program. Thank you so much to both Alicia and Allison, and to all of our participants for a great webinar today. If you're able to ask your question or you have any additional questions, please just email them to webinars@recruitingtrends.com. A recording of this session will be available on www.recruitingtrends.com within just a few business days. Thank you, everyone, and have